Okay, like Dev introduced, I'm Malaysia born, but now I'm based in Taipei, Taiwan. And because some of my previous documentary touch about the historical content, that's why I have to work with archive footage. Okay. Okay, archive footage a lot. So in the next hour, I'm going to share with some of my experience how I use archive and my thought about archive. Okay, and just to be frank, I don't really give talk in English a lot, so I'm going to give talk slowly. So if there's anything unclear, just raise your hand to clarify. Okay, over here you can see this is the some of the ethnography photos taken by Japanese ethnography in the early 19th century. And those are very rare photos. Nowadays, we celebrate this beauty of the ethnography studies. Okay, and you can see over the map at the lower right bottom, the photo was taken in Tainan, which is the central south of the Taiwan. Okay, and there's a Tapango, which is a Zhouzu, one of the indigenous people of in Taiwanese. We have to thankful to those photographer. So because of them, they take all those photos so that today we can see the living conditions, the phases of those indigenous people at the early 19th centuries. And in Taiwan, okay, in Taiwan, actually there's a lot of archive photos, footage all about those indigenous people. Okay, this is another photos of indigenous ladies because they have a tradition of a facial tattoo. So normally they took a lot of these photos of different girls came from different tribes. Today, when we see all those photos, we celebrate, we say this is the beauty of analogies because they preserve what does the indigenous look like in the early 19th century. Okay, we also say this is a goodness of advanced nation. At that time, Taiwan is underdeveloped countries. Okay, with the help of Japan, only Japan, they have the resources to come with the photographies and know how to take photo of those indigenous people. Okay, and also we say they do it for the truth of sociology study. Okay, let me be clear about this. The photographers came with good intention. They believe they do it for scholar study. They believe they do it for the human studies. Okay, but okay, let me ask you, during the time when the photo was taken, the Taiwan was colonized by Japan. Okay, as a photographer, how can a photographer travel from the urban city far away into the mountains and then take those photos? Can you imagine under what kind of situation or scenario how those photos were taken? Can someone guess? I mean, and for your background knowledge, a lot of the indigenous people, they have hate hunting traditions. When the enemy approach, they kill them. Now I'm going to ask a question. As a photographer of a photograph analogies, how can he approach those tribes and then take all those photos? Sorry?
You must befriend them.
What?
You must befriend.
Befriend? Yeah, of course this is approach to befriend them, but most of the scholars they do it in a very short. What? Correct. With the armed force. Because they are the colonizer. They have the police. They have the arm. They have the modern power. And they believe they do it out of good intention. So they go into the tribes and then they say, you guys come out, dress yourself in tradition costume, and then I'm going to take photos of you. This is how archive build up. Most of the countries, this is how archive build up. Archive built up by the power of colonial. Because archive needs central government to sustain it, to maintain it, to manage it. You see? And the development of the footage, the development of the documentary is very in line with the colonial expanding. Why? Because the beginning of the ethnologies or sociology study, to justify the colonial, they have to prove it scientifically. White people is more superior than the colored people. How they prove it? Using the ethnography studies, using the sociology studies. That's why they have to go to all those tribes. They capture those people image, they capture how they live to show that they are underdeveloped. So that as a more superior country like the British to Malaysia, Japan to Taiwan, So to justify their reason to rule them, they use all those data. They collect all those data. So the main purpose, the beginning purpose of the archive, they want to use this data to control people, to manipulate people, to colonize people. So today, when we go back and say we want to use archive, we have to be aware how the mode of production of archive. As the filmmakers, we have to understand this mode of production, and it's our responsibility to deconstruct it, to understand the reason behind it. Okay? So you see, nowadays we celebrate, oh, this lady's facial tattoo is captured at that moment by the photos. But if you are the indigenous people, how would you feel? I mean, people from a more superior colonized power come in with armed force and then tell you to sit there in the tradition costume and take photo of you. If you are that lady, how would you feel?
Intimidated.
Yeah.
Intimidated.
Fear, intimidated. But then this person who photographed this, he doesn't sense her fear at all. He only see the beauty of the so-called the truth, the so-called the sociologist, whatever the reason. So ask yourself also, I mean, at that time, the photographer managed to do that is because he came from a more advanced country. He is more resourceful. He has money to buy the equipment, and then he go in and take camera. Okay? The words documentary origin from the words document. The very idea of the beginning is to collect data of human being or different culture so that they can manage the world. So as a filmmakers, as a documentary filmmakers, you have to ask yourself as well, what drives you to make documentary? Is it because just you are more resourceful? Is it because you believe yourself came from a more superior level? Bear in mind, the person who take this photo also come with good intention. He believes he's helping those indigenous people. He didn't sense the fear of these ladies. He didn't sense the power, unforced power behind that support him to make these photos. He ignored those things. As a filmmaker, you shouldn't ignore those things. If you ignore those things, you are not fit to be a filmmaker. You are a thinker first before you become a documentary filmmaker. Okay? So I used to say, if your beauty is beauty of detachment, it's not relevant to you. After you take photo, you just leave this place. Don't make effort. Okay? If you goodness is out of superiority, you think you are better than the people, marginalized people, you think you have the right to pity other people, don't make the films. If you're making film out of truth or sociology, a truth or ignorance, you didn't realize the support by the armed force or violence behind you, don't make the films. Okay, move on. Okay. So to see is to consume. Okay. Next, I'm going to play a clip. This is the situation in Taiwan because of the Japan colonized. Okay, what is the situation in Malaysia? I made a film documentary which is called The Tree Remembers. In that film, I use a lot of archive from the Malaysia archive collection as well.
是否曾经有过一段古老的时间，在种族这个词还没被发明和成为借口以前？
With the expansion of the British Empire in Malaya, there is a clutter with over 40 different ethnicities and languages. It's our responsibility to bring law and order to this land. Every local should be classified systematically and unambiguously into his racial group. They should know their place. As long as we divide and rule them, they will always be useful and obedient subjects. Last but not least, the minority of Orang Asli. They have been exploited by the Malays and Chinese for centuries, until the salvation of Western civilization, which liberated them from slavery.
berlaku dalam tahun 1800 lebih. Maka barulah timbul zaman Perang Sangkil. Zaman penghamba abdian, orang asli yang menjadi hamba di negara ini yang ditangkap, dibunuh.
Kerajaan dia kacau saya punya hak. Dia kacau saya punya kehidupan saya. Sebab kita ni orang yang paling susah sekali.
Yeah, this is a situation in Malaysia. In the Malaysia archive, you can find a lot of British propaganda films. Okay, I use all those footage and I take up all their sounds with the British accent narrative. So I re-edit it to use the footage to raise the question that I want to ask. The situation in Malaysia is in very early years, British ethnography already go into our tribes, mountains, and then they measure. They do very absurd things. They go inside and measure the length of the skull of orang asli. They measure the length of their hands. They ask them to do certain gesture. If they cannot do it, they say, oh, this is proven they are less human. They are not fully human. They are not fully developed humans. It was all in the archive. Okay? As I believe all of you must be quite familiar with the words divide and rules. Okay? It still haunted us nowadays. The idea of this race doesn't come from us, actually. It comes from this whole manipulated data of how controlling us. Okay, we do see each other as Indian, Malay, Chinese, different identity, but we more see them as the place of origin where you came from. But we don't see the hierarchy. We don't see there's a racial hierarchy. The whole idea of those so-called the racial hierarchy is brought in from the empire. Because they have to put the white at the very first stop. So someone needs to be at the bottom. So they rank who is the second, and the third, and the least is the orang asli. So in order to justify them, they use a lot of the archive footage, a lot of the archive data, numerical data to prove that there is different stage of development. White is the most developed. Then the Malay, the Chinese, and then in order. That's right. And it's hard to believe that we inherit that thought. Nowadays, it's still haunted and influenced in our living. And this whole idea is built on by the archive. Okay, that is why I use those archives and then I try to deconstruct it and then put it a different framework in the true remembers. And then I ask, okay, I'm using the same footage. Are we still going to carry on to live in their ideas? Do we still want to do that? Okay, now I'm going to play my second clip. There is a film which is done by MFU at that time, which is called the Timeless Tamia. They actually go to the Tamia tribe and then they make a documentary of the Tamia people of Orang Asli. And in fact, that documentary win a lot of awards in the across the International Film Festival. And it's still the most profitable footage in the archive nowadays. Okay, and then again, I also use that clip, but then I'm going to change the framework of it. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah.
Deep in the jungles of Malaya, high and steep dark hills, live the Temia. The Temia are one of the tribes of the Orang Asli minority. They derive their livelihood from the jungle. The Temia are famous for their culture. They are also called the Dream People. They have learned to control emotions in their dreams. When a boy wakes up from a dream, he will seek advice from the tribe's elders. For them, there is no boundary between reality and dreams. Whatever appears in a dream should be taken care of as if it happened in reality. If a boy dreams he has received the amorous attention of a girl, the boy must send her a bunch of flowers. The Temia are a peaceful people, both in the dream world and in reality.
Bagus, kamu jalan terus, jangan berhenti. Jangan pandang kamera, lihat atas, lihat sekeliling. Bagus. Kamu sudah blok oleh semak-semak, jalan terus. Jalan terus. Baik. Cut. I hope you catch the humor behind it, okay? Yeah. The film, if you have a chance to watch this film, The Timeless Temia, the whole film is narrated by British accents. There's no single word of Orang Asli language was heard. None of them speak for themselves. The whole film is about how the ethnographies, studies, and narrate the livelihood of Orang Asli. Okay, so this is how I do. I play with the footage. In the beginning, I try to trick you like this is the timeless Temia that we're going to watch. Okay, so you can see the beginning part, the narration of the beginning part is actually the same as the timeless Temia, the film itself. So I changed the later part. And then I asked the current Orang Asli to add for this timeless Temia to reenactment. Okay, I want to show you the mode of production, how it was made. During the time when timeless Temia was made, this is how it was made. They instruct the Orang Asli, go straight, don't look at the camera. And then they ask them to wear the traditional costume, ask them to do what they don't normally do. And then they say this is a traditional custom of Orang Asli. Okay, and this is how I play with the footage. And also, although, okay, I believe all of you here, because we are lovers of documentary, we are audience of documentary. Documentary doesn't claim privilege of truth. Doesn't mean whatever screen or shoot and show in documentary mean is true. No, you should always have doubt. You don't easily believe whatever show to you. I want audience to have doubt with me. This is why I'm playing with the footage. Because in the beginning, you believe, oh, this is timeless Temia. Then later on, you realize, oh, the filmmaker is playing trick with you. You should always have doubt with whatever shown to you. You should always think, ask questions, challenge the filmmaker, challenge the film you're watching. Doesn't mean the documentary means proximity to the truth. It's not guaranteed. Don't take it as granted. Actually, my first experience with working with archive is quite disappointing. My first documentary is Accent Without Leave. It's about how I try to find out about my grandfathers. And in that documentary, I have to use a lot of the archive from Malaysia, Australia, British, and also from Japan. So at that time, I actually discovered there is a few animation, which is very interesting animation. It shows a super techniques, animator skills, but it's a propaganda animations. It shows to the Japanese kid at that time why they want to invade Southeast Asia. But just purely looking at the cartoon, the animation itself is very well done. Okay, I'm going to show you some of the segment of the animation.
大騒ぎとなった。大臣は慌てふためく事の次第を王様へ言上した。船から上陸して宮殿へ飛行したのは鼻の尖った白人である。お情け深い5羽の王様、私たちは遠い国からはるばる参った商人でございます。このお国の人々とどうか仲良く兄弟のように付き合っていただきたいのです。 つきましては、我々は毎日船へ帰るのも大変ゆえ、この島のどこかに私たちの休息できる土地をお譲り願いたいのでございますが、いかがでしょう。私たちの船には世界各地の宝物がぎっしり積み込んでございます。まずペルシャの絨毯、エジプトのタバコ、インドの宝石、シャムの首飾り、安南カンボチャのサラサ、シナ関東の。
Imagine this is a whole generation of Japanese. They're growing up watching those animation. Okay, in this animation, there is a hero called Momotaro. And you can see all those soldiers. They are animals, and they are wearing uniforms, but they are elephants, all those different monkeys, different kind of animals. Okay, the ideas behind this animation is telling those kids, the Southeast Asian need us help, need our help. Their rulers is bullied by the Western power. So we as Japan, as a more advanced country, we have to go and help them. This is the whole propaganda behind this is to teach the kids, the students, the young people, like it's our duty to go and save the Southeast Asian. Okay, at that time, I want to use this animation in my documentary. Okay, once you talk about archive, you have to get involved with the copyright permission. It's very difficult. Okay, I even wrote letter to this the animation the company, the movie company who owned this copyright, and it took very long process to argue with them to ask for permission to use it. And I even write to the families of the animator, the animator's family still alive, like asking for permission to use it. And of course, I was rejected because they say they don't want this thing to be mentioned again. It involved a lot of the great animators, the later on great animator of Japanese animators. Okay, not just one. There are quite a lot of animation like this one. The film actually was screened in Cannes Film Festival, the remaster version. Okay, exactly the year when I asked for permission to use, and because they screen in Cannes and then without the context, without the really saying this is a propaganda imperial army propaganda films, not telling the context. So actually, it attract a lot of critics. A lot of people criticize about this, and that is the reason why the family reject me to use the footage. They want to hide it forever. Okay, so I can't use it. Okay, when you work with footage, work with archive, you will meet such kinds of problem. You have to deal with the copyright. Okay, then this thing is always is a stone in my heart. Like I really want to use the animation. In fact, in the film itself, it actually tells like they will come and then helping the sultans, the ruler of the Malaya, because they were bullied by the Western. So they should and they did tell a bit about the divide and rules things. They should help the Malay, Chinese is bully, they are anti-Japanese, all these things in the animation as well. Okay. Later on, when I developed my another documentary, The Taste of Wild Tomatoes, again, I come back to this footage because I really want to use it. I say I must include this animation in my documentary. So I find my way to use it. I'm going to show you the next clip. The guy that you see just now, he is a Taiwanese, but he was a Japanese soldier. At that time, because Taiwan was Japan colonial, so a lot of the young guys were recruited and to fight for Japanese army. He's one of them. Okay, so when I filmed him, I interviewed him. I want again, like I say, I want to use the animation again, but I don't own the copyright. I didn't get the permission to use it. So I get Taiwanese. I mean, currently, young animators. We redraw the whole things. We mimic the original one, and then we make some slight changes, and then I use it again, because I want to show people why they are so passionate to fight for the Imperial Army, because they watch those animation, because they were manipulated by this thing. And I want to show to the audience the context of it. That's why I asked I employ animator, and then we redo the animation. Okay, then I'm going to show you another segment of the taste of wild tomato to make it even more complicated context. Okay, please.
「私が子供の頃、台湾は人を食う野蛮な人が住んでいる。恐ろしい場所だと聞いた。みんな、桃太郎の話を聞いたことがあると思うが、桃太郎の遠征先は鬼ヶ島だ。鬼ヶ島は言葉が通じない文明が未開の地である。かつては鬼ヶ島と呼ばれていた台湾は、日本帝国の開発や大幅の改造によって帝国の宝庫となった。君たちは努力さえすれば真の大日本帝国臣民になれるだろう。
If you grew up in Taiwan in 1920s, 30s, this is how you grew up. Okay, you receive those kind of information. Okay, when we mean archive, we mean not just only footage. Sometimes there's text, sometimes there's sounds, sometimes there's pictures. Okay, so the beginning part, the talk, there's a very big person of Japanese person telling like how he looked down on the Taiwanese is the actual speech that was in the newspaper. So I use that speech, but I ask actor come to reenact it. Okay, but not to identify with this person, so I cut the eye lines. But I want to deliver, because the speech was actually was delivered to the Taiwanese student at that time in Japan. For us to feel, if you were Taiwanese at that time, how do you feel? I mean, because you were looked down by the Japanese people. They see Taiwan as a demon island. They see Taiwan as an underdeveloped country. So in order for the Taiwanese to prove that they can be human as well, they serve to the Imperial Army. They see the need, they see the urge, like to prove myself can be a worth a person, so they want to join the army. Okay, and then the footage later on that you see, some of them is from the Kaohsiung, from the archive, Taiwan archive, Kaohsiung, and also Taipei. And some of the footage is from the family footage. Like the early part, you see there's a kindergartens, the children's marching is actually a family footage. The parents take footage of their young kids when they go to kindergartens. Oh, and I use that and then edit and then collage it together, because I want to show you the process of how, if you grow up in 2030s, how you grow up and educated by those Imperial Army education. Okay, audience like to take side. Audience like to believe that we are on the right side and then the villain is on the other side. Okay, as a filmmaker, sometimes we need to blur that line. Instead of easily judge people, we have to think of how we can put into the shoe of the others. This is what I'm trying to do. Like, it's easy to say, oh, how silly the Taiwanese, why they loyal to the Imperial Army. But ask yourself, if you grow up in 2030s, are you good enough to sense that all those are propaganda content? And we have to be aware, people can be very easily manipulated. People can be very, very easily manipulated by the footage, by the media that we receive. And that is one of the reasons why we must fight censorship in Malaysia. Yeah. Because with lack of if you are not well knowledge, we can be easily manipulated. They control how we think. They just direct how we behave. And that is the danger of it. Okay. Later, I'm going to show you another clip of my latest documentary, which is done last year, from island to island. And for that documentary, I also use a lot of footage from different archives, even the Australia and British as well. So I'm going to screen that. Yeah.
辻さんもそれは亀ですか。
亀だ。だからこのチビ亀は我々にこの半島の軍事情報を取ってきてくれると。我々はマレア地元の青年組織 KMM と軍事情報組織亀を立ち上げた。
奴らにとっての利点は
メルデカだ。
メルデガ？
マラヤ語で独立のことだ。マラヤの KMM、インド兵の AN、奴らが独立したがって。
独立我々は奴らを独立させるのですか。
明日のことなど知るか。我々にとって今最も大事なのはこの聖戦である。1ミリたりとも抜かりがあってはならんのだ。作家、詩人、音楽家、画家、彫刻家、映画監督、みんなひとまとめにして台湾に送り込み、迅速に我々の文化戦士として従軍してもらい、あまねくアジア全土に送り込み、人心を掌握するのだ。
Semangat sebenar Jepun serupalah semangat sebenar ajaran Islam. Ajaran Quran seperti diturunkan kepada Muhammad samalah seperti ajaran agama dewa-dewi Jepun Shinto. Seperti ditulis dalam ayat 112 Tenno Heika Maharaja yang berketurunan dewa-dewi matahari juga adalah pelindung pada agama Islam. perang yang sekarang di bawah Maharaja Teno ini juga adalah perang suci, sebuah jihad bagi menyelamatkan kalian dan semua manusia dari kejahatan Barat. Apa British buat? Tanam getah, tidak boleh makan. Mesti tanam padi, boleh makan. Jepun pandai, British bodoh. British membuat kalian mundur. Inilah waktunya fajar menyingsing akan zaman kesedaran dan juga zaman memancar. Rebutlah peluang pendidikan untuk menjadi sebahagian warga Maharaja dengan mempelajari semangat Jepun lewat bahasa rakyat Jepun. Modernisme mengenalkan Taiwan akan seni, muzik dan lukisan moden. Pengajian ubatan-ubatan tropikal membuatkan rakyatnya selamat dan sihat. Pembangunan moden dan pembinaan pengaliran air sekaligus kan memperkaya hasil tuaian padi kalian. Ini anak benih padi dari Taiwan. Terbukti agar kalian boleh menuai hasilnya 2 kali dalam setahun. Makanan cukup berharga waktu perang. Setiap orang patut terlibat dengan usaha menanam banyak makanan.
This is a documentary talking about the World War II and the relation between the Taiwan and the Southeast Asia. Okay, in the beginning scenes, you see there's 2 persons using the storytelling. That is which is called kamishibai, which is one of the kind of Japanese storytelling skill. They will use the storyboard and they go on the street, and then by changing the background and then they tell story, which is one of the very common propaganda ways during the World War II. Okay, and all the lines, all the scenes, all the footage that are used in the film is all evidence proof. Even the general conversation with the people is derived from his own diary, writing about that is the general who planned the invasion of Southeast Asia. And I even found the actual venue. The venue was in Taipei, Taiwan, the place where they hold the meeting and where they decide they want to invade Southeast Asia, and they already list out the name of the Chinese leader they want to kill once they invade. And this war involved not just soldiers. It involved, like I mentioned there, musicians, artists, writers, newspaper reporters. And this is shock to the Taiwanese audience. This is new to the Taiwanese audience. And again, I use all those footage, I reconstruct them, I deconstruct them, I putting into another framework, and I ask questions again, to raise questions again. And like it was shown in the footage, during that time, in order to attract support from the Malays, the Japan government indeed tried to link the Shinto belief with the Muslim belief. They say this is a holy war we are fighting. It's the same holy war Muslims should fight. And that is the reason why quite a number of Muslims actually joined the Imperial Army. No, I'm not trying to finger pointing here or accuse, but we need to know what we have been through. This is history. It shows how people at that time can be easily manipulated. And we should be more aware of that. And that film, From Island to Island, actually the length of the documentary is 5 hours. That's quite terrible, I know. Yeah, because I want to show how at that time people at Taiwan, Malaysia, Japan, some of the footage was from the Netherlands, Holland archive, because at that time they were shot in Indonesia. A lot of the propaganda film targeted Malay audience. It was filmed in Indonesia. And before the war started, they already have the artists, all those media workers trained to speak Malay. Once the war started, the soldiers go out, and then later on, all the artists go to Indonesia, to Malaysia, occupy all those newspaper, all those media agency, and try to control, because they do know fighting, using soldiers to fight the war physically is important. Also, fighting the mindset is very important. And they are quite good at doing that, actually, as you can see from the films. Yeah, to see is to consume. Why I'm saying that? Because if you look back at the history of the image, people who can consume the image in the beginning is mostly aristocracy, the noble people. Because in the past, only the rich people, they can own the old painting of nude woman, landscape, kings, queen's portrait, with all the property from the tropical colonized. To see is to consume. So, like I say, the origin of the documentary is very much in line with the ideas of colonize, how we manipulate people. So, we shouldn't say, nowadays, we shouldn't just limit our purpose of doing documentary just to document. No. There's no so-called the subjectivities. It's you who want to make the films. You want to ask the question. If you don't feel the need, you want to ask certain question, don't make the film. You need to be in the films. Show me who you are. Show me what kind of question do you want to ask through making that film. Be responsible for the question that you want to ask. Because nowadays, some of the films claim to be subjectivity, distant from the subject. No, I'm not a believer of that. For me, to make film is to raise question. And that question means a lot to you, that you have to make it. Okay? Just now, I have been sharing different ways of how I use the footage, how I play with the footage. Actually, nowadays, there's an open discussion or debate about who can own the archive. This is a legitimate question. Okay? When I do Absent Without Leave, when I do The Three Remembers, I want to use the archive, the footage that was filmed in Malaya. With filming our own people, Malayan people. But then, I have to ask permission from the archive of overseas with very expensive costs. Does it make sense? These are all the property they own from the colonized time. Now I want to use it to tell my own story and history, but then they're going to charge me with high price. Does it make sense? And this is something we should think about that. Okay, and I face a lot of questions of that when it comes to copyright. Okay, and who can own it? Sometimes most of the archive collection that we well known today is they inherit from the empire collections, like the British, the Netherlands, Japan. And actually, they have a lot of the footage, but they don't allow public to use it. Okay, and then second, sometimes the same segment of the footage, you can find it in different archive. Because it's unclear. In 1940s all the way until, because we don't have the ideas of the copyright law at the beginning stage. So some of the archive, they so-called they own the copyright is because they own the negative of it, the film copies. So to play with it is the same footage, you have to search through the different archive. You don't have to pay all, you just pay the lowest price. You just pick one. You get what I mean? Because they don't claim the absolute copyright of it. Okay. And then the copyright issue is always sometimes I always have like conflict opinions with my producers. Okay. Copyright issues become problem only when the film finish, when you have to sell it to broadcaster like TV broadcaster or sell it to the platform, then they want you to show you own the copyright, the footage that you use in the documentary. Okay, so from the perspective of the producer, they always want to play safe. They want all the footage to be clear copyright. Okay, for my perspective, like I say just now, more important for me is why I want to make this film. So some of the footage, even I don't get the copyright, I just use it. If a copyright lawsuit is very complicated, because sometimes you have to, for the owner at one country, sue another user in another country. It's a cross-country lawsuit. It takes years. Yeah, it takes years. And sometimes it really depends on which country laws you're going to apply, to follow, to oblige. Okay, so it took years. I mean, it took years for them for the lawsuit. I already released the film. But then you have to feel the need, like you really want to ask those questions. It's important. And I'm ready to bear the consequence. I mean, if they want to sue me, because I think this is really important. So I just use it. Okay. Then the third, this is another discussion also. Like when we see all those footage, okay, like I do a lot of documentary. My next project also about Malayan emergency. You see, during the time Malayan emergencies, a lot of the British make a lot of the propaganda short films, newsreel. They come and then they show the victims, the Chinese victim, the Indian victim, Malay victims. Okay. During the time when they shoot, they didn't ask for permission. They didn't go and say, "Can I shoot you?" No. They cannot show me the document of permission to be shot. Why they claim me the price to use it? It's a reasonable questions. We are the descendants of those victims. Then why they claim the copyright of it? Okay, this is an open discussion. But then, even nowadays, if you have a chance to visit some of the museums in Europe, they already think about that. Okay, in some of the Europe museums, like for example, sometimes when we visit museum, we see those scars. Skeleton, the scars, human scars. It belongs to someone grandpa or grandma, right? But when we visit those exhibits, it just show Homo sapiens, orang asli, Temia. It doesn't mention whose descendant are they. It doesn't mention this car belong to who. It's not a person to them. It's just an object. Okay? If you visit some of the museum today, like in Germany, some of the exhibit they show, they actually tell who are the descendant of these belongings. Like the scar of some person, then they say his great grandsons, what is his name, and some description about him. So that when we see this object, when we see this thing, it's not just things. They are human beings. It belongs to some person. It's a living human beings. And this is something we can improve on, we can think about, and we can question in our documentary. Like the very famous skull we have in the Museum Negara, Perak Man. What tribe does it come from? Who are the descendants? The descendant of the tribe, does he approve this to be exhibited in the museum? Did we ask? Did we care to ask? Do we give enough respect to these tribes? This is something we should think about. Okay, let's move on. This is some of the artists that I quite like and I share with you. Okay, the left one is a Vietnamese artist. Okay, as you can see, this is a very famous photos of the Vietnam War. Okay, he used all the Coca-Cola, McDonald's logo brands, and then he nick it up. Like he questions this mode of production. Who own the memories? Who create the memories? Who is controlling the memories? Okay, this is a photography artworks. And on the right is done by an Indonesian artist, Agap Harapan. Okay, he used a lot of the historical photos and he distort it. Like, because nowadays we are so addicted with the Marvel's heroes. And then he asked, during the World War II, where are those Marvel's heroes? So he put the heroes in all those photos and questioning this. Okay, and then there are a few documentary I would like to introduce, like the Colonial Institute, which is done by it's a Germany documentaries. This documentary talk about how the museum was run during the colonial times. Okay, this documentary actually questions all those collection in the museum. Who own those collection? Who can use it? Can the descendant come and claim those things back? Okay, this is a very powerful documentary. Let me see. I can't remember the city, but the whole museum. That even during the time of colonial, even the university, the purpose of the university is to train people to help to run the colonial system. Okay, so the whole idea is the museum knowledge back the university to train people to go out and then to colonize. Okay, and then the second one is a Shelley Silver Girls Museum. This is a very interesting documentary. We can play the trailer of it. The second one, the Girls Museum.
Wenn ich ehrlich bin, vielleicht war Jesus Christus auch eine Frau und niemand weiß es. Und er hat ja das Christentum eher verkündet. Vielleicht dachten die Menschen, das können nur Männer. Ich würde denken, höchstpersönlich, dass ich es sehr schön finde, weil Jesus eine Frau war. Und ich finde es sogar besser, wenn Jesus vielleicht auch gar kein Geschlecht hat, dass es beides sein könnte.
جنس‌های مختلف است که یکیش پسر است و یکیش دختر و یک جنس مختلف دیگه است که هم پسر است هم دختر است و در جامعه که ما زندگی میکنیم چون در اینجا شاید بسیار کم مورد اذیت قرار گرفته باشه اما در جایی که خود ما بزرگ تولد شدیم و بزرگ شده افغانستان هستم از افغانستان آمدیم که اصلا زندگی نرمال آرام ندارن تنها مشکلشان نیست که چرا ما پیدا شدیم
This is a very interesting documentary. They gather a group of young girls, teenagers nowadays, and then they ask them to go and visit the museums. And then the museum is full of the previous like collection, the oil painting, all those archive. And also, as you can see in the Western painting, there's a lot of woman nudity, all these things. And then this director going to ask those young teenagers, girls questions, how they think about those oil painting. Why? Because he tried to check, is there any bias or prejudice that we still inherit? We don't question those artworks. Okay, so those young girls, some of them are German locals. They are also girls of refugees' parents. Through this way, this creative approach, he questions the bias, the prejudice, and how we understand and how we interpret the archive content. It's a very strong documentary and in a very interesting way. And the second to last is this Mother Down the Turtle Light and They Call Me Babu is the whole film is use the archive from the Netherlands, DI. There's a archive center called DI. And then they use all the footage from there to make re-edit the old footage into the films. Okay, for the last one, They Call Me Babu, he actually create a person that grew up and raised by Indonesian nannies, and that's why they call Babu. And then the whole film is narrated by this person talking to the Babu, and then using the old footage. Okay, so there are many ways to explore and to use and to create with footage that we can use nowadays. Okay, that's it for my talk, and then we're going to open for Q&A. Thank you.
Could you, because I do some work revolving archive too, so I relate with the wanting to create work and then having to pay hundreds of dollars with an already very limited budget and timeline. And could you, what's your experience with fair use then? Because that word has been floating around with documentary work that, sometimes there are some work that can be exempted under fair use. But I guess there's this whole idea then where if the work is profited, then it can't be used in fair use. But I guess even profit is like the definition of profit. Yeah, so I guess the question is like, what's your experience with that?
Yeah. Normally all those footage, if you want to use the footage from the archive, it was counted by seconds. Like every seconds, how many dollars? Like every frames, like precisely. And it can cost a lot. Okay. So, and it also depends on the copyright own. You want it to be like 2 years, 5 years perpetual. and then to what extent of commercial release. Okay, most of the time, if you really have that budget and you really must do the documentary, make it for education purpose. Yeah, you just pirated the footage. I mean, it pirated. Preview, and then you record it, and then you use it, and then you say this is for educational purpose, which means it has to be educational purpose. You cannot be found selling it to any broadcaster or selling tickets. Then it will violate the copyright law. But then if it's for educational purpose, most of the time you won't get trouble. I mean, there are a lot of these archive company is very big. They are too big to bother with your little project. You get what I mean? Because they use it for BBC, even bigger broadcaster. So if you do it for education purpose, they probably then, if they didn't know it, they won't bother to find any trouble with it. Yeah.
We actually use archives from the British National Archive, and it's the content will be available to the public for free. No
Public domain, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, you don't have to pay for it. So but then in using the archives on their website, they said that every usage must be communicated with them. So in the spirit of respect, we emailed them saying there's no profit, everything. Can we use it in fair use? They replied with an invoice.
Oh, they
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess in that way, I mean, like what you're saying, I'm just thinking out loud. We can just use it without paying and then be like, it is this educational.
Yeah, you just say I mean, it's very troublesome now for them to lawsuit and then sue you. There's ways, I mean, you don't use it directly. Okay, you can through another medium, show it, and then not using it directly. Okay, I have seen one of the documentary artists, because he also he's very frustrated with these copyright issues, and then he actually paid for very expensive copyright footage, and then he make a statement: everyone can be free to use his documentary. You get what I mean? He paid for very expensive, and then he edit it, and then everyone, you can just use my footage. It become free for everyone to use. This is one of the way for him to go against the archive power. Yeah. Next question, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your class. I really appreciate it a lot. And since you have chosen this very critical space using archive to talk back to the imperial power and the colonial power, given that for Taiwan and Malaysia in Southeast Asia, we didn't really have the space and the freedom to reflect on colonizations, especially for Malaysians audience, or we mostly think of the British colonizations and American imperialism. But what you have brought to us today, which is very meaningful, is about the impact of Japanese imperialism in this part of the world. And until today, Japan has not apologized and acknowledged that they have done so much damage. So, however, in the decolonialized movement, it was more political. It was more against the physical warfare. But today, we got to see this brainwashing creating more damage in the mind, and that actually is currently here. I think is here, is in the room. So when you show your work in Japan, in Taiwan, how the Taiwanese able to react to it? Especially, I think most of us we were born in the new era when Japan already is the baby boomer, is the a different game in the world that we look up to. We use we grow with Sony Walkman and all that, right? So how that reaction, what's the reactions of the Taiwanese audience? And also for me as a Malaysian audience, I really appreciate your work, and I wonder, but the public Malaysians audience, I think need to see this, because what you have said, we were divided and ruled. Different brainwashing were used by the British and the Japanese in different communities. That's why I think we need to get together and see how we were brainwashed before, and what can we do about it from now on.
Because as you can see, because Taiwan, after the Japan colonial, Taiwan was ruled by KMT government for 40 years. And it was a long 40 years of white terrors, harsh ruling. Okay, so for a lot of Taiwanese, by comparing the ruling of the KMT government and the Japanese government, they say the Japan government ruling is better. So they feel a kind of sense of nostalgia with the Japan era. Okay, so when at first when I screened this film documentary first time, it was not planned to make for 5 hours. I did the 2.5 hours, discover all the evidence, how the Taiwan soldiers was involved in the massacre in Malaya, in Singapore. Okay, I show this first 2.5 version to some of the young Taiwanese. Okay, and after watching it, they are so frustrated. They ask me, what are you trying to do here? This is not doing by us. This is not done by us. This is our great grandfathers. Why are you trying to tell me all these things? Okay, at that point of time, I realized my film cannot stop there. Because if you leave those young people in frustrated, they easily become extremists. Or they shut down. They reject to think. They reject to know more. And they easily become manipulated, you know. So that at that point of time, that is why I developed the second 2.5 hour. Because although today we say the Japan government deny all the wrongdoings, but actually among the commoners, among the educators, among the activists in Japan, they do a lot of things. They do a lot of things trying to tell their younger people what happened in Southeast Asia, although this go against their government. Okay, in my films that I film a history teachers. He teach his student about what happened in Southeast Asia, and in fact he gathers a lot of the tour group. So-called tour group is he gather all the young people, secondary school student or university school student. They ask them to travel with him to Malaysia and to see those victims of massacre. You know, sometimes when we read the history, like how many certain number of people were killed, certain number of people were killed, it's hard for us to imagine those are living human beings if we don't see them. He brought all those kids come to Malaysia and see those very old victims survive the massacre. Her parents were killed and he was barely 4 years old and he survived the kill. And the thing is so powerful that, you know, although those young people already knew what they're going to see before they came, but when they come here, they see the real person, they cannot accept it. Some of them start to scold these old people. They say, you must be lying. How can you survive? It's impossible. Because emotionally, it's too much burden for them to bear. And these history teachers came back to Malaysia more often than me. And this is what some people, some individual can do. And for me, I need to show those paths, those way of how those people think, those way of how those people act. And this is why the film in the end become 5 hours. Because the second 2.5 hours, I want to show some example. Some people that I admire and respect and what have they done. So that for the younger people, they can not just sink into the sad mode or sentimental. They should try to add something out from it and how they can think of it. Thanks.
So in this, practice of remixing and also looking at history from a different perspective, while also, paying homage to what really happened. In your in your process of editing and creating this, I know that editors also have this thing called technical imagination. It's like they have this world already, like this doesn't work here, so it wouldn't belong in this logic technical that you built, right? Which is imaginative. I'm wondering also, I don't know if this is a buzzkill, but like, is there, when you're creating this new meaning and remixing, is there a line you draw for yourself? Like, I won't go beyond this way of telling the story, or do you have thoughts of being careful with the archive, and how do you do that? yeah, if someone were to be interested in remixing, yeah.
Okay. For me, I always think about how do we define, if our documentary creative is exotic, just to make it exotic and then to approachable for the outsiders. Okay, for me myself, I have an answer is without the context, it's very easy to be exotic. Okay, without the context means like today I can make a film easily say, oh, Taiwanese are blindfolded, they were misguided, and then they are all become evil soldiers. Okay, if I just simplify it in that way, that easily become exotic. Okay, with context means that is why the more the later on project is getting the length longer, because I want to show the context. I want to show how those people growing up, how they were educated, how they were misguided. Okay, let's put our place in their shoes. If you are kids at that time, do you think are we clever enough not to reject all those propaganda? No, we will also be misguided. And this is what I'm always careful with, the context. When we present certain person, when we present certain footage, certain things on the screen, we give them enough chance or enough space for him to explain himself. Enough context for us to know him as a human being. Although this person may do some bad things in the end or in the process, but does he have enough space to explain for himself? This is what I really care for. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kek Huat.